What's happening, everybody? Good evening. I hope all is well. I hope all is well with you. So, as you can see by my title, this live is about why I finally left my career as a peer counselor. And I didn't write anything down. I don't have a script or anything like that, or I didn't really plan this one out. So, this is just going to be my unfiltered thoughts about this. First of all, to let you guys know, this is just my opinion. I know that other people have other experiences and people are going to think different things. Some will agree, some will not agree, some have experienced this, some have not. But as always, I'm just giving my authentic experience and my why because I feel like sharing helps foster conversation. And sometimes conversation brings change. So I want to start off by just speaking about how and why I became a peer counselor in the first place. I never wanted to do anything in my career related to counseling. It was never something in my head, it was not in the back of my mind. Counseling was never a thing for me. I never thought I would receive any, and I never thought that I would give counsel to others. Hi, Cindy. I never thought I would be doing either one of those things. How that ended up happening, to make a really long story short, I developed a really bad problem with anxiety in 2012, where I was getting frequent panic attacks. And it was just a very tough time. Led me to a depression. There was just a lot going on. I've talked about that story at length on my page. And if interested, I will find where I've put those videos and link them, but I'm not getting into that now because that is not really the purpose of this particular video. So, as I was going through the experience of trying to find out what was wrong with me, why I was getting those panic attacks, what they were, because I didn't even really understand what a panic attack was at that time. I went to general physicians, I went to psychotherapists, I went to the hospital, I went to variety of different people, and I did get some answers. I got some scientific answers. I got some answers that gave me medical definitions about mental health and anxiety. But what was lacking was an empathy. I didn't have anybody to walk this walk with me and say, I've experienced what you're experiencing. I know what it is, and I know that there's a way out of it. Or not out of it. Out of it is the wrong word, but I know that there's a way for you to heal and get better and resume life, function, and be happy and, just be able to keep moving forward. I didn't have that because I didn't encounter a peer specialist. The first time I really experienced any kind of empathy when seeking help from medical professionals happened to be a psychiatrist. And I know that a lot of psychiatrists, not all, but a lot of them are just one, two, three, here's your meds, talk to you later. But in this particular case, this psychiatrist was not even empathetic, but just they seem to be an empath in general. Because to say that they were empathetic would mean that they shared that they were going through something similar, which they didn't, but they just kind of, I understand where you're coming from. I know it's difficult. And Here are your strengths. And I think, and I know, not even I think, this person told me, I know that you can get out of this. It took a long time for me to get to the point where I am now, which is at the point where I obviously have been working as a peer specialist for almost 10 years. Almost 10 years. I was going to this day treatment program in 2013. And at this program, it's basically a psychiatric rehabilitation program which teaches people who have mental health disorders, especially those who are new to having a mental health disorder, coping skills. It teaches you different coping and life skills. It teaches you stress management, teaches you anger management, like there's just different classes that are led by these social workers and therapists. And you go there. The time for mine was, I think, 10 to 2 or something like that. And you go to different groups and then you go home. And then they also have programs that assist you with getting back to work if that's in the cards for you, like if that's what your goal is, if that's what you're trying to do. So I ended up going there, and there was this one group that they had every Monday, and there was this guy who led the group. He was a peer counselor, and I didn't really know too much about what a peer counselor was. In fact, I didn't know what a peer counselor was at all. But I learned that peer counselors have essentially existed in the workforce for a very long time. The new part is the certification. Before, there was no certification required. Being a peer counselor just basically meant that you were somebody with a behavioral health and or substance abuse background who has gone through a process of recovery and is now wanting to and willing to help others go through that process. So I remember that peer counselor spoke to me one day because I was in his group for a while. And at the beginning, when I first got there, I was going through the worst of it. So at first, I was in the group and I was just really quiet. And then I was like, if I'm coming here, I would like to have some kind of problem solved. So I started speaking in the group. I said, this is what's happening with me. This is what I need help with. I started to become more vocal. And him and some of the other group members would give me advice. I would take the advice, and in combination with going to therapy, I was able to resolve a lot of those problems. And then it reached a point where now I was doing more listening than speaking. And when I was speaking, I was helping other people in the group solve their problems. So the peer counselor spoke to me one day. He said, Mark, I think you would make a great peer counselor. And I said to myself, I don't want to be a peer counselor. This was shortly after I graduated from college. I had a bachelor's degree in business administration. So what am I doing with peer counseling? But I was willing to listen to what he said. He was like, I think you're very empathetic. I think that the people in the groups take very well to you. I think that you have amazing leadership qualities, et cetera, et cetera. So he said the state of New York is rolling out this peer certification, which will be a requirement eventually throughout the state to get a peer counseling job, but also it's something that will help distinguish peers as professionals in the workforce. And he said, I think that, and he said it's free. And I think that at the very least, you should try taking some of the classes towards that certification, see if they interest you. So I went home, I thought about it for a while. I was like, you know what? Let me just take the coursework, see what happens. So I started taking the coursework and I was like, this is incredible because the things that I was learning in there, things that I had never heard or seen before. And I said, the world needs certified peer specialists because the process that I went through to get the type of help that I need was so unnecessarily long. And the reason why I fought that process so long is because I didn't have the person with the experience speaking to me, or I didn't have the person who was willing to share their experience to tell me this is what's happened with me. These are the resources that I used to get better. Here's some hope that I can provide for you. That type of thing was missing, like I said. So I was like, you know what? I see an amazing opportunity to be that person. I got the certification. My first peer job was basically volunteering at that same place that I was receiving the counseling. So it started off small, where I was leading one group. The group was called Peer Recovery. So I led that group, and then I led another group, which was a men's group. And then after that, a position opened up for me. I mean, I don't even want to say a position opened up. They didn't have a peer specialist in that place at that time. And a special provision was made for me to become the first peer specialist at that particular place. And it was a small job. I was only working a few hours a week, but it was one that I really liked. And it was one where I had the reins to be able to just speak to people the way that you see me doing on here as a almost like a motivational speaker, and to just give people hope and let them know what I've been through and let them know that there's hope for them to get from where they came in, which was usually at a low point, a lot of times right from the hospital, to get to where I currently was at that time. So that was my part-time job. So eventually a full-time position opened up elsewhere. And I ended up taking that full-time position. And that was basically the beginning of me really becoming a professional peer specialist. I started working full-time in a clinic where I basically would see the clients and we would have sessions which would operate, I guess, a little bit like how a therapy session goes, except it's not the same in terms of necessarily the care plan, and you don't diagnose as a peer specialist. So those are probably two key elements. Although nowadays they have peers doing care plans also, but the diagnosis part really is, I would say, the main thing that is not happening with a peer. You're not telling them, you're not diagnosing them, and you're not really diving too deep into medication because that's not in your scope. But anyways, I enjoyed that as it was. I enjoyed that as it was. What has started to happen as time has gone on? They say peers are more valued in the workforce than they used to be. There's more peers employed now than there used to be. There's something I have to say about that. They can do anything they want with statistics. More peers employed than there used to be, probably true. I haven't looked into it, but it's probably true. But it's not about how many peers are employed, it's about what you're using those peers to do. I have been asked to do things as a peer, that are unethical, that are illegal. I've had demands put on me as a peer that have actually impacted my own mental health. Some of those things I've even reported, nothing was done. As an example, a peer specialist. So I remember being told by a clinical director of a place I was working at, they were like, the only thing that I need you to do is to tell the clients that they need to consistently see their therapist and their psychiatrist and make sure to take their medications. Otherwise, we are going to call 911 to put them in the hospital, and that I should tell them that. I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe that I was being told that. I remember coming in and saying, I can help in this way and this way. This is my skills as a peer specialist. These are the types of ways that I can assist people, and being told, no, don't do that. We don't need you to do that. All we need to do is basically check off these boxes that you're doing A, B, and C so that we can continue to get our grant for this program. Now, right now, the trend is to have the peer specialist do a lot of care coordination slash case management work. So title the job as peer specialist, but then in the job description, list out all these case management skills that you need in order to get the job done. They're not concerned with the peer specialist portion of it. And here's why, because now a lot of case managers, at least in New York, I don't know about other states, but a lot of case managers in New York must have an LCSW or LMSW master's degree in order to do the job. And by having that qualification, they're paid significantly more than a peer specialist. So they will hire the peer specialist. They will hire more peer specialists in some cases than care coordinators or case managers because they pay them significantly less to do almost the same job. Like I said, there's a couple of things that the peer specialist can't do that the LCSW or LMSW, licensed clinical social worker, um, they can do, but we can't. But it's not enough for the wage gap. So just for some other context, if you sign up for a job as a working peer specialist, that means that you come in with a disability. It's a disability. You have to have some kind of mental health, behavioral health, or substance abuse diagnosis to even qualify to be a peer specialist, in addition to whatever educational requirements the company requires. But you have to have some kind of mental health diagnosis to be able to be in that position. And you're supposed to be protected by the ADA. There's supposed to be laws in place. There are laws in place, but those laws are hard to get people to enforce. So they throw the kitchen sink at you as a peer specialist. You have to do this high caseload. You have to um, do all this case management, care coordination work. They want you to push them towards taking their medications because the medications are the big money maker. The pharmaceutical is the big money maker. So getting them to take their medications is huge. And I'm not even saying that sometimes people need to take medications for various reasons. I know medication is a topic of its own, but I'm just saying there's a business side of it that I have seen through many different companies. Now I could go through my whole history, but I really, if it would take a long time for me to do that, and I would like to do that properly in a series that is more well thought out than this Friday night random live. But I want to say this. When I started a career as a peer specialist, I did not have an intent of starting it and leaving it. Absolutely not. I planned to be a peer specialist for the rest of my life. I said, this particular career was made specifically for somebody like me. Why did I leave? Number one, it doesn't pay enough. It does not pay enough. I know one peer specialist. Well, I can't even say no. I know no. I can't even say that. I was about to say that I know one peer specialist that makes six figures, but this was somebody who started as a peer specialist and is now a director, a program director. So this is not somebody who's a peer specialist making six figures. So I know those peer specialists that are making six figures. And I know that educational background matters and however much you're bringing in, all of that matters. I'm not saying that all peer specialists should be out here living in mansions. But what I'm saying is it's underpaid. It's an underpaid profession. Let's be frank. It's an underpaid profession. And it's not all about money, but they are advancing the amount of things that they're asking you to do as a peer specialist significantly. And the increases in the pay are very little. Now, advancement in and of itself, in one of my most recent job interviews, the employer, it was for a peer specialist position, and the employer asked me, "Do you have any questions for me?" And I said, "Yeah, well, what are the opportunities for advancement?" This person laughed. And I'm looking at them like, did I say something funny? Was I telling a joke? They said, "Well, this is it. There's no advancement in your position. You could work here for a year and then transfer into a new position that has different opportunities, but as far as peer, a peer is a peer. There are some places here that do have peer 1, peer 2, and peer 3, but when you look at all the different requirements and the pay, the math ain't mathing. Just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So money is one reason. Number two, a lot of these companies don't even have a peer supervisor. As a matter of fact, only one of the many companies that I have worked for as a peer specialist has had a peer supervisor. And what that means is that they throw you in there as a peer. And I've had so many supervisors ask me, what is a peer specialist? And they're my supervisor. How is somebody who is contracted to supervise me not even aware of what a peer specialist is? So, as you might guess, this causes a lot of confusion. It causes a lot of difficulty because to understand the peer specialist is not just a matter of what is the job function of a peer specialist? It's also to understand this person has a background with a mental health disorder. So they're coming in with a disability. So that means that it's a it's a different thing managing this person because their cup is going to be a little smaller than somebody else's cup. You might have to make certain accommodations. They might have days where they can't handle what you're giving them. The companies are not prepared to do that. They'll find ways. They'll find ways to cut you out. And I know people who have tried to apply for short-term disability and things like that when those types of things happen and get denied, or the process is so long and arduous, and the thing is while you're applying you can't work, so you have to be willing to go without money indefinitely until you can prove these things by going to your psychologist, psychiatrist, whoever, EAP, whoever. It's tough. That's two things: the money, the lack of understanding in the position, the lack of advancement within the position, the general disrespect for the peer specialist in the field, how you are essentially kind of disregarded because everybody is like, okay, psychiatrist, psychotherapist, care coordinator, this, nurse, this, and that, peer specialist in the hierarchy. That's how it goes in the meetings. That's how it goes in the case rounds. That's just how it goes. The people who are putting the peers in these positions in these higher volume numbers that have ever happened before, and this is probably the last thing I'm saying, and then I'm wrapping up. These people don't necessarily care about the peer specialist, the function, what they do, anything like that. They are people who have seen that nowadays there's a lot of funding for having a certain amount of peer specialists on your workforce. It's almost like affirmative action in a way, an affirmative action for peers of sorts, where it's like, we need 10 peers because if we get these 10 peers, the government is going to give us this grant. And the C-suite salaries are going to go way up because of this grant. So we're going to throw everything at those 10 peers that we hire. We just need them to sit in there for a certain amount of time. If they can't handle all of the stress and the burden, cycle them out, get in new peers. We just need 10 people in those seats. And we need to prove that we have tried our best to accommodate those people and they just can't handle the job. So like I said, I've worked almost a decade in the field. There are some parts of it that I have enjoyed, but none really related to any of the companies except for one or two, maybe like two companies that I really did like working for. They were nonprofit organizations. Those ones, sadly, I left just because they couldn't pay me enough to stay, truthfully. And I'm not even saying in a sense of like, oh, I needed $100 from them. I'm just saying they were paying not enough to live off of, minimally. They were paying very close to minimum wage, those two particular companies that I'm talking about. So I couldn't afford to stay. As much as I liked those jobs, I could not afford to stay. The ones that did pay me a little more appropriately were asking for way too much. from me, demanding way too much from me. I think I served my time well as a peer. Yeah, I'm a little bit sad that I ended up leaving, but I also knew it was inevitable. 4 or 5 years ago is when I really felt like something major has to change, or I'm not going to end up doing this anymore. And nothing really changed in a good way for me. It's changing in the worst way. So I think that the theory of the peer specialist position is awesome. I think that in practice, peers are used and abused in the workforce, and I will no longer be a part of that. Will being a peer specialist for a company be a part of my future? I'll never say never, but I will definitely say not right now. Starting a new, different job, different career path in January, and we'll see how that goes. But for those of you who are interested in receiving individual peer counseling from me, this is something that I have been doing. I started doing this in December. I got my first clients in December. I'm loving that. And I have all my information. I'll post it up again for you to contact me. Um, and we can take this journey together. So I want to thank everybody for being here, for listening. Drop those opinions in the comments, and please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel to get notified of when I drop some more great content. Thank you and have a great night.